at any rate, things were moving right along. I had about probably 8 months into my second tour over there with the 101st, and we were working with CCN out of Da Nang. And we had taken a Special Forces team and inserted them about 20 miles inside Laos. And their mission was to observe a main supply route coming in there. And we inserted them, then we came back to Da Nang and just stand by waiting for them to make contact and complete their mission so we could go extract them. At about 3 o'clock in the morning, they woke us up and said the team has been compromised and we need to head on out there and give them some support. So we climbed out to altitude, and when I got to altitude I contacted the team leader, and he was an old friend of mine from my time with 10th Special Forces, and I knew this guy was pretty cool and didn't panic under situations, but I could hear the stress in his voice. And he said that they had been compromised and they were in heavy contact and they were surrounded, and they needed us to provide some support for them so they could break contact and go to another location. So I told him we were about 15 minutes out, and I'd call him back in a few minutes. So, probably 5 minutes had passed, and all of a sudden he came online, and his voice was real squeaky and high-pitched, and he said, we're Winchester, and we're Prairie Fire, which means those are code words, we're out of ammunition and we're being overrun. And I could hear a tremendous amount of fire in the background. Suddenly the radio went dead. I kept trying to contact him, couldn't contact him. We got out over the site and set up an orbit. I didn't see any tracers, didn't see any strobe lights, nothing going on. It was all quiet down there in the valley. And so we set up an orbit, and I called CNC and told them what we had, and I told them I was going to stay on station for a while to see if we could make contact with them. And we continued to orbit and couldn't make any contact. So I told my wingman, I said, on this next pass, we'll come around, you head back to Da Nang, I'm going to drop down low level through the valley floor. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'll follow the road up and see if I see a strobe or something. And he said, oh, roger that. So we came back around, and he pointed back towards Da Nang, and I started my descent into the valley and got down. I was cruising along the old valley floor there at about 140 knots, just clipping right along, and didn't see anything, and it was pitch black out there. The only way I could see was the white road winding through the valley. And I was following it along, and I was coming up on the position where we last knew the Special Forces team was, and all of a sudden the whole damn jungle erupted in muzzle flashes, tracers every which way. So I initiated a steep climb, figured if I get up above 2,500 feet I'd get away from them, and bullets were impacting on the aircraft, and I thought, well, we're going to make it. I was watching, I was climbing up, I was about 2,000 feet, and all of a sudden a round come up through the floor of the aircraft, and between my legs, and hit me right in the chin. Popped me right there, knocked the snot out of me, I'm telling you. But I was thankful whoever loaded that round that day up in Hanoi put a short load in it, probably, because it didn't, just the bullet stuck up under my tongue. But it really kind of dazed me for a minute, but we were still climbing, and I could hear bullets pinging on the aircraft, and we got up to about 3,000 feet, and I leveled off and thought, well, we're okay, I'd been hit. My front seat said he'd been hit in the arm, and but I could see the lights at Da Nang way off in the distance. And I thought, well, we'll be all right. We're flying. There's no caution lights on. Sounds good. We'll make it back in. Just about that time, I see a big, big flash right out front of the aircraft, and then bam! I heard one behind, and I thought, that son of a gun. They got me bracketed by probably a 37 or a 57, and then the next one hit right outside my canopy. You have to bear with me for a second. That's right. Blew the canopy out, blew all my instruments out. Piece of shrapnel hit the side of my helmet, split it open, and we had that 120 knot wind rushing in on me, and I couldn't see anything. It was dark, you know, but we were still flying. But we had a heck of a one-to-one lateral vibration. It was almost like we were in a washing machine. It was out of cycle, you know. And but I could still see the lights up ahead and everything. And asked my co-pilot how he was doing, and he said he'd taken some more shrapnel, but he was still all right. And tried to call out on the radio, couldn't get a call out. No one was receiving us. But we're flying along, and I thought we're going to make it. We're head straight into the hospital at Da Nang. Well, I had my lights on flash bright, so that I wasn't a constant target for people up there, you know. And all of a sudden, the damn lights flashed, and a tree went by. I thought I was at 2,500 feet, but I had no instruments on the console. They were all blown away, and I thought we were still at altitude, but apparently we weren't. We were going down. So I saw the tree go by, and I immediately flared and pulled pitch, and when I did that, everything went to shit. And we impacted in a rice paddy and hit a rice paddy dike, and we hit hard enough that all the rockets in the pods just flew forward out of the pods into the rice paddy. We hit that hard to release those catches. Drove my seat down through the floor of the aircraft, the front seat down into the ammo bay. The aircraft was just, engine was just howling, and instinctively I reached up and pulled the main fuel switch off and got it shut down. I thought we were going to probably catch on fire, because found out later the transmission also went down through into the fuel cell. Well, if you've ever seen a Cobra, you know that you got to climb up to get into the damn thing. Well, I was trying to pull myself out of the aircraft, and I reached out and I grass. Yeah, I had buried it that far into the ground, you know. So I pulled myself out and I rolled down into the rice paddy, and I thought, damn, something is burning, you know. I wonder why I was burning. My chin was burning, my arms were burning, and I realized I was swimming in JP4 from the fuel cells. So I pulled myself up over the rice paddy dike into the on the other side of it, and I thought, man, I never knew muddy, stinking rice paddy water feels so good. But I'd been shot through the chin and the arm, and had shrapnel all over the damn place. We were a mess. Plus, I found out later my back was broken in 2 places. And I tried to stand up. I couldn't. I had my chicken plate on. So I took it off, and that helped a little bit, but I still couldn't stand up. I could get up on my knees. I crawled over to the aircraft, and Jim was still trapped in the front seat. He couldn't get out, and he was in extreme pain. And we were out here in the middle of the night. You know, my wingman didn't know we were down. And later on, he told me he went back. They landed at Da Nang, turned around, and shot the spotlight down the runway so we could see. And we didn't come in. He came back out looking for us. Well, I saw him go by about 3 or 4 times that night, but no way to signal him. And I was looking like a wussy here. I had my emergency radio, but I was going in and out of shock, and I couldn't remember how to turn the thing on. Then I realized all you do is pull the antenna out, and it comes on. So I got it on, and I put out a mayday, and I had some guy come back on board and say, "Where you at?" And I couldn't think. I said, "Well, we're someplace in Vietnam." and they thought I was messing around, because a lot of times the Air Force jocks leave their emergency beepers on in their jackets at Da Nang, you know, and that causes problems. So found out later that the tower at Da Nang had heard the squawk, but turned it off because they thought it was some pilot, since it was close in, had left his jacket thing on in his vest. But the guy that I was talking to on the radio, he said, "Quit messing around, you know, this is an emergency frequency." I said, "No, we're down. I don't know where I'm at, you know, someplace in Vietnam." And at any rate, it got light, and saw some movement out across the rice paddy. I was like, "Well, this is great, you know. He's trapped in front. I can't get up." So I crawled over to the side of the aircraft, took out my .38, popped off a couple rounds at them. And they scurried back into the tree line, and I was waiting and waiting, you know, and I said, well, I wonder if I scared them off. And Jim said, look over your shoulder, you idiot. I looked over my shoulder, and there was about 200, what we call rough puffs, ARVN militia, had come out of the tree line behind us and were coming across the rice paddy. That's why those guys took off, not because I fired at them. But I thought, well, at least, you know, they're going to help us. Well, they helped us all right. They helped themselves to my survival vests and my boots and my gun, and then left. So we're still laying out there, and as soon as it got light, a loach came by and saw us, calf loach. They called a medevac, got us out of there. Jim was medevaced out to Japan that same day, and I laid around the hospital at Da Nang for about 2 weeks, and their x-ray machine had broken that afternoon, so they never really x-rayed me. The doctor said, well, you probably just got some muscle spasm. So they sent me back up to Fubai, and I was laying around at Fubai, couldn't fly. I was in agony all the time, so I went over to the flight surgeon at Fubai, and they x-rayed me. He said, well, hell, it's no wonder you're hurt, and your back's fractured in 2 places. So I stayed on the ground there for about another 3 weeks. They made me supply officer, and then I finally got to the point where I was cleared to go back and fly. He said, there's nothing we can do for you except let it heal. So I flew one more mission, and came back in and landed, and I was getting out of the aircraft, and they came out and said, hey, you got orders, go back to the States. C-130 is leaving at in about 2 hours for Saigon. Go get your stuff together. So that ended that. But that was my most harrowing experience in Vietnam. That was the closest I come to dying that night. And you're not supposed to get all misty over this stuff. You know, we're supposed to be hardcore. But it was 2 good tours. I really had 2 good tours, and there was a lot of interesting, funny stuff that went on during those tours. I recall one time in my first tour flying Charlie model guns. If you're not familiar with them, they're pigs. They had a 900 horsepower engine in them, and they just were underpowered as could be, and you had to really finesse them. We had a brand new lieutenant, and I was flying with him one day, and over there lieutenants were automatically aircraft commanders, you know, and even though I had a lot of more hours in him, he was the aircraft commander, and we were going lickety-split across the rice paddies, and there was a single little straw hooch out in the middle of the rice paddy, and he said, I'm going to scare those people in that hooch. And I says, well, you need to start popping up now, because this thing will mush through on you. You know, it's not like a slick. You just can't bounce over stuff. And he clipped line and says, pull it up, Lieutenant, pull it up. He says, nah, I'm going to scare him. Well, he got real close to it, jerked back on the cyclet, and damn thing mushed right on through, went right through the side of the house. Ripped the skids off, left the skids sitting in the house. We flew back to Bearcat, had to set up sawhorses to set the damn thing. They hovered over there, and they put sawhorses up under the aircraft, and then we set it down on the sawhorses so they could put new skids on the thing. That's what I told you. You know, you got to finesse these things. They got to think a way out ahead of them, because the Charlie model is a pig. We used to do what we call porpoising to get off the ground. We had one refueling point down in the Delta that had water along each side of the runway, and then down at the end of the runway was telephone wires. And the refueling point, you'd refuel and have to hop over the water to get to the runway. Well, what we'd have to do is fuel up and then pull it up as high as you could to a hover, and then as it started bleeding off, nose it over and hope you made it to the runway. Sometimes you didn't. You went down and set it down in the water, and then you had to pick it up again and move it. When we get out on the runway, we actually, people have trouble believing, we actually had the crew chief and the gunner run alongside the aircraft initially until we got transitional, and then they would dive into the thing, and then we would pull it up as high as we could, until it started bleeding off, then nose it over towards the runway, and the next time you go 20 feet, and then the next time 30 feet, and by the time you got the end of the runway, hopefully you were at 100 feet and could clear the power lines. If you didn't, you went down in the rice paddies at the end of the thing and had to sit there and burn off fuel. And guys flying nowadays can't believe things like that happen, you know.